Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the 2015 Mason Public Leadership Lecture. This lecture is part of the Terry College Leadership Speaker Series, which is a series that has brought a number of distinguished leaders to the University of Georgia campus. Representing the public and private sectors, our past speakers have both educated and inspired our students through their lectures over the years. Today's honored speakers, Pete Correll and Dan Amos, will be participating in a discussion that is moderated by one of our students, Derek Hammock, a Master's of Accounting student from the Terry College of Business. This morning's discussion is part of an entire day of special events here at the University of Georgia that mark an historic and important point in the Terry College of Business. This afternoon, we will dedicate Correll Hall and we will break ground on Phase 2 of this important facility, Amos Hall, which is part of our new Terry College of Business learning community. With these state-of-the-art facilities and the innovative programs that are housed within them, we are truly creating a new standard for business education in this country. We're fortunate to have the namesake of the Mason Public Leadership Lecture Series with us this morning. Keith Mason is a loyal and dedicated alumnus who has served as a trustee of the University of Georgia Foundation since 2007. This lecture series reflects one of Keith's passions, and it's an important component of the UGA experience, public leadership. He shares my belief that this great university, the first public university in America, should be producing great leaders for the state, for our nation, and for this world. We are very pleased that Keith and his wife Twinker are with us today. We thank them for their generosity in supporting this lecture series, and I would ask you to join me in welcoming them today. As I turn this program over to Dean Ayers of the Terry College of Business, I thank all of you for being with us for this most important event.
Thank you, President Moorhead. I, too, would like to thank Keith Mason for establishing this lecture, which underscores an important element in success in life and in business, and that's public leadership. Through attention and action, true public leaders demonstrate that success in their fields is also defined by the contributions that they make to others. Today's speakers are two such leaders, and they are great friends of the University of Georgia. Daniel P. Amos has served as CEO of Aflac since 1990 and chairman since 2001, having spent 37 years with the company. Under his leadership, the company's reputation and its revenues have grown dramatically. He has been named one of America's best CEOs by Institutional Investor magazine 5 times. And Aflac has been named one of the 100 best companies to work for 17 consecutive times by Fortune magazine. Dan is a member of the Board of Trustees of the House of Mercy of Columbus and previously served on the board of the Children's Health Care of Atlanta. He is the former chairman of the board of the Japan American Society of Georgia and also the former chairman of the University of Georgia Foundation. Dan holds a bachelor's degree in risk management from the Terry College and in 1990 was recognized as the college's Distinguished Alumni Award recipient. A.D. Pete Correll has dedicated his life to public service, both serving as CEO of Georgia Pacific for 13 years and also since his retirement. A native of Brunswick, Georgia, he now serves on the boards of Nature Conservancy, the Carter Center, Keep America Beautiful, the Grady Hospital Memorial Corporation, the Georgia Aquarium, and more. He is also the recipient of numerous honors, including the Salute to Greatness Award from the Martin Luther King Jr. Center for Nonviolent Social Change, the Doing Most Good Award from the Salvation Army, the CEO of the Year Award from Paperloop, the Distinguished Community Service Award from the Atlanta Urban League, the Executive Papermaker of the Year Award from Paper Age Magazine, and many, many more. Pete holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Georgia and a master's degree in pulp and paper technology and chemical engineering from the University of Maine. In 1994, he received the Terry College's Distinguished Alumni Award. Moderating today is Derek Hammock, and Derek is an accounting student in the Terry College. He is also a B.B. and Earl Leonard Leadership Scholar, a Deer Run Fellow, and has served as Vice President of the Student Alumni Association's Student Alumni Council. Please join me in welcoming today's speakers.
Thank you, Dean Ayers. It's an honor to be with you all today, and I know we're all looking forward to this, so let's get right to it. So this first question, Mr. Correll, Mr. Amos, is for both of you. In your business careers, when did you first recognize the role that public leadership and civic engagement played in your business success? Can you talk a little bit about why you get involved and lead in the community? Mr. Amos.
Mine's easier. Well, I guess it goes back to my family who started Aflac many years ago, and their role and their interest in not only just building a company, but also in helping the community. And it was a natural thing when you graduated from the university. They were interested in having you involved in some shape, form, or fashion. And so I immediately took hold of that and became involved with the university, and that has just been a pleasure since then. And we've expanded because I believe that people want to do business with companies that make life a better place. And so if you can balance the two, it ultimately helps everyone. Now, the job of a corporation is to make a profit. And if you don't make a profit, nothing else matters. But once you've done that, and then you can also give back, then I think people want to do business with those type of companies. And so I think it's worked very well for us as time has gone on.
Mr. Correll.
Well, I grew up through the operating side of the forest products business, and one rule of life is people don't live where trees grow. And so I went to work in small communities. The first town we lived in, the company at the mill employed 5,000 people, and there were 2,500 people in the town. So you quickly conclude that you are 90% of the tax base. If you want anything good to happen in the community, the leaders of the business have to do it. So I grew up saying, if we're going to make these better places to live, our employees have to become involved. And so it was kind of a code that we carried on early in my career. Ada Lee did most of the involvement, and I did most of the working. But over time, as Dan said, I started to make enough money that I could do a little bit of both. So,
Thank you. Mr. Amos, turn back to you. So I understand that you've been heavily involved with your favorite charity, the Aflac Cancer Center in Atlanta. Can you talk more about this opportunity and others that you've participated in the public leadership role, and how that also helps your business?
Well, it's an interesting story about it is, of course, being in the insurance business, you make money off selling health insurance. And so when Children's Healthcare, at that time it was Eggleston, came down to see us in Columbus, they wanted us to give $25,000. And I happened to look at it. My wife, Kathleen, and I were looking at, she at that time was in charge of the donations committee, and we were discussing, and I saw that it was $3 million for a naming opportunity. And it just hit us both and hit the other people that were with us, that I said, I don't want to give $25,000, but I might give $3 million. And I thought we had to pick people off the floor when we told them. But it was something that really connected with us, that giving back to pediatric cancer might well be the right thing. And I believe in business, you need to focus on certain things. I don't like shotgun approaches. I like more rifle approaches. And so we honed in and we decided, yes, this would fit our niche. And so Children's Healthcare then became the Aflac Cancer Center. And I made a donation and encouraged our people as a matching gift. And our field force, who are independent contractors, gave money. And this year we passed $100 million that we've given to Children's Healthcare. And it's really made a difference in the lives of kids and their families with cancer. But not only that, I think it's made a difference in the lives of our employees and the people that have given, because they feel a part of something, that they're making a difference. And so while we're in the business of making a profit in the insurance business, we're also in the business of giving back and trying to cure kids with cancer.
Well, I think that message resonates with all of us, and I think we can all take something from that as well. So, Mr. Correll, turning back to you, so I understand that during your career, after your career with Georgia Pacific, you answered the call to help reform Grady Hospital, which you know you didn't have to do. So why did you accept this major challenge, and what lessons can be learned from this proactive community leadership of yours?
Well, I tend to drink a lot, and so one night after a couple of drinks, somebody said, Grady's broken. Then the next thing is, we ought to get some people to fix it. And the next thing was, well, we ought to fix it. And so I decided to go fix Grady Hospital. It's been the joy of my life. It really has. We raised $350 million in 90 days. I went to Jimmy Williams of the Woodruff Foundation and said, I need you to give me some money, and then I need you to go with me to other foundations to tell them that you're serious, Pete's serious, we can get this done. And he said, how much are you trying to raise? And I said, $200 million. And he said, well, why don't I give it all to you? And I said, well, that'd be a hell of a lot simpler. And so he gave us $200 million. We raised another $150. And it's been a labor of love. I've been at it for 7 years. We've turned a broken down hospital that couldn't make payroll into probably one of the best, if not the best, public safety net educational hospitals in the United States. And I've had a ball.
That's awesome. I didn't expect to get that response, but I think everyone enjoyed it.
That's the advantage of being old. You don't have to answer the question.
So, Mr. Amos, what do you consider your greatest contribution in public leadership while chairman and CEO of Aflac?
Well, one of the responsibilities is, of course, shareholder return and how you do from that standpoint. And if you don't do well in that, you don't keep your job. So certainly that's an important part. But I think it's also building a network of people that will be there to take over after me, and having a diversity of workforce. I think that's very important. And I've got 2 African American, one females, one's president of the U.S. operation, one's general counsel, and I think that has been something that I'm very proud of, and how much diversity we've had from that regard. And I think also being the best places to work, that certainly has been something that we've been proud of. And then Ethisphere has recognized us for being one of the most ethical companies in America for the last, I guess it's been 12 years in a row. And of course, you're only as good as your ethics. And so that's been very important. So those things I would say.
So you mentioned diversity. Can you talk more about why diversity is good in the workplace and how it helps your business?
Well, it's because America's made up of a diverse group of people. It's not made up of 60-year-old white guys sitting around the table. And I think if your leadership team is made up of just that group, then you're really not getting the diversity to understand what's in the workplace and what the customers and consumers want out there. So it's a good business decision for doing that. And that's what we try to do is to bring in all aspects of business. I had a gentleman came in and spoke to us on diversity one time, and we all have heard the saying about do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And he made the comment that always stuck with me, that some people is do unto others as you would want others to do unto them. So in other words, just because it's the way you might want to do it isn't necessarily the way that she might want to do it. So you've got to take through and think through the process of that. And then you can relate that back to product and services. And if you relate it to that, then this person may want a different product from this person. And if you've got them all at the table in discussions and management, then it ultimately makes you a broader-based company, and I think prepares you better on the international forefront as well.
So, Mr. Correll, along this same topic, similarly, there's much exposure today in the media of race relations in communities throughout our nation. Why do you think we're experiencing these problems that we are today?
Well, clearly, the difference between the haves and the have-nots are greater in our country than have been at any time since before the Civil War. Most countries solve these problems by revolutions. I think we're at a point where people have to step up, and they've got to go ahead and recognize that we have, in this wonderful recovery we've lived through in the past 20 years, we've left a significant part of the population behind. Some of it was their fault, some of it was the system's fault, regardless of whose fault it is. I think the leadership of this country has got to step up, and both black and white, and say, regardless of kind of the old saying, I don't know how it got there, but the ball's in the rough. Somebody's got to go hit it out. I mean, and I think that's the most pressing need of our country.
So, continuing with you now, so during your career with Georgia Pacific, you were one of the major advocates for changing the Georgia state flag. How did you gain behind-the-scenes support for such a large, public, controversial change?
Well, Roy Barnes said he would have been governor in the second term if it hadn't been for me. And, and that's probably true. And that is also very sad. Of course, the thing was bubbling. The Final Four was going to come to Atlanta. They said, we're not coming and play under that flag. And I was chairman of the chamber. That really didn't hit me as bad. At Georgia Pacific, we always flew three flags. We flew the Georgia Pacific flag, the U.S. flag highest, and then the state flag below it. A group of employees came to me and said, I'm not coming to work until you take that flag down. So we started flying the flag of whatever foreign country was visiting us that day, or we wished would visit us that day. And took the state flag down. And I just became convinced that while it was not offensive to me, my family grew up in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia and fought for the South, but it became obvious to me that it was the wrong thing to do. And then, so we really went to work for it, went all over the state, got it changed, and then Roy came up with that placemat flag. Y'all can't remember it, but it was the ugliest thing we ever saw. And finally, we've gotten a flag I hope we're all proud of, and we've gone through that part of our terrible history.
Very interesting. I know, I was much younger when this was going on, but, it still affects all of us today as we see other states, going through the process of potentially changing their flags as well. So now I want to turn to a more technical topic for Mr. Amos. So SayonPay is the ability of corporate shareholders to actively vote on corporate executives' compensation, how much they should be compensated. So, Mr. Amos, why did you put in place SayonPay before it was required by law?
Well, that's an interesting story. We got a shareholder proposal on SayonPay, and back then no one was doing it. And when we got it, it of course went to our board, and Chuck Knapp is on our board and has been on our board for the last 30 years, I guess, 25 years. Time flies. I can't even remember, Chuck. But what was interesting was I thought, well, what have I done wrong? What is it that they want to vote on me all of a sudden? And we talked to the institution, and we said, what's going on and why is it? And they said, oh, no, it's not you. We don't have any problems with you. It's we think that people should be allowed to vote on SayonPay. We talked it over at the board and at level, and none of us really had a problem with the idea that the shareholders had the right to do that. So we were actually the first company in America to vote on SayonPay and allow it to pass. And I also thought it was the wave of the future. I thought they wanted to see that because there have always been issues about shareholders and how they felt about compensation. And so we went ahead and we decided to put it in, and we got enormously high vote of yes. And the critics that were out there about compensation gave us praise. And my thought on was it, well, if they really wanted to complain, we needed to know about it. And if they voted yes, because some of the critics were not the people that own shares, but people that own no shares. And I was really only interested in the people that actually could vote on me. And so I was glad to do it, and the board was glad to do it, and we got a lot of positive press for it, and we were glad we did it. And later, now it's become law. So it was the right move for us. And I think that's all part of a movement that we feel on our board about corporate governance, about transparency, and about being up front with changing times. And that you have to figure out not where the puck is, as Gretzky once said, but a great hockey player is where the puck's going to be. And so we wanted to try to figure out. And so looking at corporate governance, we thought where the puck was going to be would be voting on SayonPay, and that's why we wanted to go and be there.
I think that's just an example of many of your business practices being considered proactive and progressive leadership, and I think that's just one example. Did you feel that you had a responsibility to outside shareholders for convincing them to also vote yes on SayonPay, being on the cutting edge of that?
Well, we just told the story. Since when I became CEO, the stock was $1.80 a share, and so today it's close to 60. So most of the people that have owned the stock have done very well for us. And so, people tend to vote their pocketbooks in the business world. So I thought that it would go well and that it would do so. And so all we did was just present the facts and let the people vote accordingly. And it ended up being very positive for us.
Thank you. I want to ask one more question, and I want to tailor this question to the students in the audience, like myself, who are about to embark on their business careers. So think back to when you were 22 years old, 23 years old. What do you wish you had known then about life and business that you know now? And also, what competitive edge do graduates need today to excel in business?
Well, you've got to remember, I'm 22 years old. I've just graduated from one of the worst business colleges in the United States, which is now one of the best. But go back 52 years, and I didn't know a damn thing. I knew I needed a job very badly, and I knew we needed to make some money. So I married Ada Lee, and then we had two incomes, and we set out to conquer the world. But most of what I learned in life, I either learned very young from my mother, who ran a retail store, who said, all this accounting doesn't matter, it's cash. If you understand cash, you understand business, because you cannot pay bills with earnings per share. And I never forgot that. And so I set out as a young guy to conquer the world, and we moved all over the United States, and I've been very blessed. But most of what I knew was next to nothing.
Do you have a piece of advice for the students as they embark on their careers, something they might challenge that you've overcome?
Well, I'm a very simple person. I concluded very early in life that I could accomplish more than 12 hours than most people could in 8. So, so I simply outworked people. I was the first one on the floor and the last one off. And I figured, very simple odds. I absorbed more in 12 than they would in 8, and it worked. Now, it was tough on my family life and everything else. I was lucky to be married to Ada Lee, who raised my children. But if you will, everything in life has a price. I don't think I thoroughly understood that when I was 22 years old. But every decision you make is accompanied with a price. And if you're prepared to pay it, fine. If you're not, you can't gripe about the results.
Mr. Amos?
One of the things that I took from the university as I went into the business world was something I learned about the 3 principles of risk management and insurance. And I use it every day and brag on it. And that is, don't risk a lot for a little, don't risk more than you can afford to lose, and consider the odds. And if you take those 3 principles, you can apply them to almost anything you do. And you can apply it to crazy things like the Aflac duck and the chances we took to do that. You can apply it to making a business deal of some kind. You can apply it to anything. And being able to take those and studying something will make your life much easier as you try to figure out how to choose what you want to do, what direction you want to head, and how you want to do it. And I think that's something that I learned in school that helped me later in life. The thing I would tell the students as you're going out in the world is don't be set on what you want to do as you go out. Be flexible. Your first job of what you're going to do is probably where you will not end up later in life. You need to be flexible and willing to move and adapt. So you might take a job one place that starts you to where you can then zigzag and move. But as long as you're learning along the process, you'll ultimately become better, and people notice. One of the things I've always said when we get lists of people that want to be promoted is, have I heard their name? If I've heard their name a lot, it's usually things that make their name pop to the top because of something good they've been doing, and it's easy to promote those type people. And it doesn't have to be in one area. So ultimately doing that. And then the final thing I'll say is to be focused. Whatever you want to do, focus in on it and get it done. And as Pete says, it's always about work too. How many hours you're willing to put in. And you can work smart, but you've still got to work long hours.
I appreciate that. I know I appreciate the advice and the contributions you both make to the college, and I know all the students here do as well. I've asked several questions now, and so I'd like to turn it over to the audience to ask 3 or 4 questions, if we have any. Yes, sir.
When you were at the University of Georgia,
Be careful, brother. He and I were fraternity brothers. I do not trust this question.
when you were at the University of Georgia, you worked hard, you studied occasionally. But the bottom line was this: did you ever dream, did you anticipate you would be in a position somewhere in your life where you'd had the option of either naming something or giving $3 million to a charity? Did that ever occur to you?
No, I don't think it did. You don't look that far ahead in life. I don't look that far ahead in life. You kind of look for the next horizon, and I think it's been a real blessing in my life, the things that I've been able to accomplish. But it's the people that surrounds me that help me accomplish it. You get good people. Yogi Berra said one time that somebody said, Yogi, can you tell what makes a great baseball manager? And he said, yeah, a great baseball team. And that's about the way it is. I've had a great team around me.
I'd like to just seize on one thing Dan said. If you look at my life, I graduated from the University of Georgia with a BBA. And then I decided to go get a doctor's degree in chemical engineering. Now, there aren't many people in graduate engineering schools whose undergraduate degree came from Georgia in business. And it turned out to be the best decision I ever made. I got accepted to Harvard Business School, and I got accepted to Maine to get a degree in pulp and paper and then chemical engineering. And I told Lee I'm going to Maine, and she broke down and sobbed and said, why? And I said, because they'll give me a scholarship, and Harvard makes me pay my way. And we didn't have any money. But strange twists in your life that you don't plan can turn out to be the best decisions you ever made. I wouldn't be sitting here if I had not gone to graduate school at Maine.
Other questions? Yes, Lynn.
So for each of our speakers, what was the greatest challenge that you faced in leading each of your organizations, and how did you work to overcome them?
Well, when I went to work for Georgia Pacific, it was a red check shirt company. I mean, macho men. I quickly realized what Dan said, that we had to change this company if we were going to recruit the caliber of talent we needed to compete around the world. And so I got our team together and I said, I have great news for you. We're going to win the Catalyst Award. And they said, we're not even on the list. No manufacturing company has ever won the Catalyst Award. We won it 4 years later, and we changed the company by saying what Dan said, that if we're going to do business in 15 countries, if we're going to have 60,000 people working all over the world, we can't be red check shirt white guys in Atlanta, Georgia on the 27th floor, 52nd floor, excuse me. So I think that was the toughest challenge I took on, but the most gratifying.
I think with me, probably the thing was how caught off guard we all were during the financial crisis. Our company was strong. Everything was going great. Stocks were at an all-time high, and all of a sudden the financial markets just shut down on us. You couldn't borrow money anywhere. It was a period of sheer chaos. We saw our stock drop dramatically, as all financial institutions, including insurance companies, did. And we had to reevaluate and look at what we were going to do. We set up a new, Chuck was in charge of the investment team. We ended up putting in a brand new investment team when Chuck came in and setting up a separate office in New York. And it was just how the world had changed. All of a sudden, sovereign debt was considered the safest. We were considered the safest insurance company in America at the time because that's predominant. And all of a sudden, there were sovereign nations going out of business, going bankrupt. And all of a sudden, we had to reevaluate how we would change and what we would do, and we corrected those things. And it just showed me how interconnected we all are when you can wake up and realize that Greece can affect what's going on with U.S. treasuries or with the U.S. government. You realize how close we all work together in a worldwide market. And so that was something that we learned to adapt to, and fortunately we are now in a strong position. We were strong then, but now we're much more flexible than ever before.
Yes, sir.
It's often easy to sit back later in life, and I include myself in that, and look successful, but life isn't a straight line. And I wonder if you would just comment how you dealt with things that didn't go well, that doesn't show up on your resume and that you generally talk about. And I ask that question so that students will have some sense that even good, talented, successful people have setbacks in their life.
Don't take yourself too seriously. Really, I've done some dumb things, and
Me too.
and most of them end up on the front page of the newspaper. And I bought companies that in retrospect, I thought that's the dumbest damn thing I ever did in my life. And what in the world possessed me to say, okay, guys, let's go ahead? I think you have to just hope that the majority of the things you do will overcome the majority of the things either you didn't do or you did wrong. The best business decision we ever made was to enter the consumer products business. And we became the #1 manufacturer of paper consumer products in the world. #1 producer of toilet paper. And somebody said to me, why toilet paper? I said, well, 99.5% of the people in the United States say they use it. I don't care about the other 0.5%. And so we got a market. But life is not meant to be as serious as a lot of people make it. Excuse me, Dan. Go ahead.
No, I think that's, well, and I agree with him about what he had to say about not taking life too seriously. You have to decide. Some of the best decisions you can make in life is when you decided not to do it. But in my life, what I've always said is if you're not making mistakes, you're not taking enough chances. The question is, do you put limits on those mistakes? That I won't let it go beyond. What happens is you say, okay, I've decided I'm going to go into this new product line or this new whatever, and I'm going to try it for 6 months and see how it does. Then they extend it and they extend it and they extend it, and then pretty soon they've lost a fortune. If you set parameters when you first get started of what it's going to be, and then they don't meet it, then you probably should shut it down and move on to whatever it is. There's no problem in life with taking risks and making mistakes. There's a problem with continuing those risks when you know that it's failing, but you're trying to cover yourself by saying, oh, no, I don't want anybody to know this failed. So you have to have an attitude in the corporation that it's all right to fail. Because if you don't have that attitude, they're not going to take risk. And if they don't take risk, your company's not going to grow. And so you have to do that. And so I can think of plenty of times that I've taken risk, but I've limited the risk to where I didn't overexpose myself to something that later on would get me in trouble in life.
We have time for one more, yes.
So you both just touched on risk. What would you say is one of the greatest risks you took taken in your life, and then how did it pan out? How did it turn out for you guys?
Well, with me, it's pretty easy. It's the Aflac duck. You got to remember that when we decided to go with the Aflac duck, we were actually making fun of our name. And so when they came and made the presentation to me on the Aflac duck, I said, okay, we'll test it. But if we test it, I'm willing to take a chance, provided it's in good taste. Well, it was in good taste, but I forgot to check. We weren't sophisticated enough. You're talking about mistakes you make. We didn't test likability. We just tested whether or not people could remember our name. And when a normal score on these testing that they do, average is a 12 of the way they test for financial services. And insurance always does worse than banks. And at that time, you didn't have the gecko duck or Geico duck. I mean, the Geico lizard, excuse me. You didn't have any of those companies that were, you had Prudential and The Rock, and you had all these financial about how strong and nobody was making fun of themselves. So to do that, we weren't sure. And so, I used the 3 principles of risk management insurance that I mentioned to y'all earlier. Don't risk a lot for a little, don't risk more than you can afford to lose, and consider the odds. The commercial cost $1 million at the time, and that was a lot of money. But could we afford to lose it? And the answer was yes. And what were the chances of it working? Well, normally the commercial scores a 12 at the best end of the range. We had a commercial that we had tested with Ray Romano, which if you were in the 90s, early 2000, there was a guy, Ray, called All About Raymond, or I can't remember, but it was a #1 comedy on TV. It tested a little over a 20. So here we are with something that tested 50% better. The Aflac duck tested a 30. And so we decided to go with the duck. And my theory is we would pull it immediately if it didn't work. And so Pete and I were talking earlier. He said, did you ever dream it would be this successful? We had no idea. We got more hits the first week of the Aflac Duck on the internet than we did the entire year before. 1 week, we got more than the entire year before. And our name recognition, which had only been about 10% or less, today is 94% and 97% in Japan where we use Aflac Duck. So that it's pretty easy to me is that was the thing that I was the scaredest of. And I said, I really and truly, I bet my whole career on the damn duck.
Well, mine's easy also. When I took over Georgia Pacific as CEO in 1958, Georgia Pacific had bought a small company called Best Wall Gypsum, and they put asbestos in the tape that you used to put wallboard up. So when I took over, I was studying, and I asked some of our people, what's this asbestos suit we keep getting together on? Well, it's nothing you ought to worry about, Pete. The lawyers have got it. So it kept growing and growing and growing, and finally we had 100,000 suits. And every company except Georgia Pacific, who had a major asbestos company problem, declared bankruptcy. And the trial lawyers came, which if any of you are going to be trial lawyers, you're hanging out with not very nice people. So they came in, sat down in my office and said, we want you to take Georgia Pacific into bankruptcy. It's be prepackaged. Here's what we'll do, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I never forget that. I went home, and I didn't sleep all night, and I called them back up, and I said, I'll see you in court. And we hired a team of lawyers, and we litigated all over this country. And when Coke bought Georgia Pacific, one of the reasons they bought it is they thought they could manage the asbestos liability, which by then was about $3 billion. But had I taken the company into bankruptcy, Georgia Pacific stock would have been selling for $10 a share right now instead of what we sold it for 48 to the Cokes, and it would be a different world. So that was the toughest decision I ever made.
Well, thank you all for your questions. And Mr. Correll, Mr. Amos, thank you so much for spending time with us today. We really appreciate it. And as a token of our thanks on behalf of the Terry College, I want to present each of you a Georgia Pewter Cup. There you go.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you.
Will you please welcome me and congratulate me.
Thank you. Thank y'all.
I now want to invite Mr. Keith Mason up to the front to conclude today's program.
Thank you, Derek. First of all, I want to thank President Moorhead and Dean Ayers and the team here at Terry College for the great work that they've done in making this program so enjoyable for all of us. And secondly, I want to thank our panelists, Pete Correll and Dan Amos and Derek Hammock. I cannot think of a better message to deliver on this great day for the University of Georgia and this college at this time, when symbolized by the activities later today in the two buildings that are being dedicated and broken ground on. Dan Amos and Pete Correll are two distinguished Georgians that I've known for over 25 years, worked with in a number of capacities, and have always had a high degree of respect. And I am personally grateful for them for doing this lecture. And I also want to announce that the 2016 lecture will feature Billy Payne, another great Georgian, another great graduate of this university, of the College of Business and the Law School, on the 20th anniversary of the 1996 Atlanta Olympic Games, and he will be here next year to tell the story about the examples of public leadership that business people gave in both securing the games, which was announced 25 years ago today, coincidentally, and then hosting the games in 1996. Thank all of you for your time and attention and being here, in particular the students of this college, and taking the time to be here today. And I hope that you will take the lessons that have been delivered here by these great gentlemen and have even greater careers than they've had. Thank you.